Hi, I'm Amy Wilkins, and this is Thriving in the Messy Middle. This podcast is where women leaders come to find clarity in the chaos, to reconnect with what matters most, and to learn to thrive even when things feel messy. In these episodes, I sit down with remarkable women leaders who share their wisdom, their stories, and those juicy lessons they learned along the way. Together, we explore mindset shifts that can help you navigate your messy middle moments with more clarity, alignment, and with confidence. I want you to think of it as your weekly reset and power up. This is your reminder that thriving isn't about perfection. It's about growth that feels good. So let's dive in. So today I want to share something inspired directly by the women that I support. So often when someone comes to me, it's because something feels off. There's a question that's in search of an answer, but the question itself feels hard to name, which makes the answer feel just out of reach. And I hear things like, I'm in this new role and I don't know how to show up as a leader, or there's so much on my plate and I can't drop a thing, or I'm exhausted and I feel like I've lost my way. And some of them say, I only know how to do this one thing. How will I ever find something new? Or I have a strong desire for something different, but I'm afraid to take that first step. And they might say, I'm ready for what's next, but I don't know how to begin. They are different words, they're different stories, but the same underlying experience. All of these statements are signals that someone is in the messy middle. Now, over time, I began to notice something important. Most people weren't lacking motivation or capability. They were lacking language. Language to name where they were without judgment. Language that didn't diagnose or rush them forward. That's what led me to create the Messy Middle Archetypes. These aren't static labels or personality types. They're reflections. Snapshots of how capable, thoughtful people often experience growth, leadership, and transition. Now, as you listen, I want to say this clearly. You may recognize yourself in one archetype. You may hear pieces of yourself in several. You may move between them over time. That movement isn't a problem. It's information. I'm going to walk you through each archetype so you can hear what they're navigating and perhaps recognize where you are right now. We're going to start with the juggler. So the juggler is holding a lot: work, family, competing responsibilities, other people's expectations, spoken and unspoken. And from the outside, things look handled. The juggler is competent, reliable, and inside, there's very little margin. This archetype often shows up in high-performing women who learned early on that being able to manage a lot earns trust and keeps everything moving. I've been a juggler more than once, and I remember the first time vividly. I was a new sales leader, and because my boss was disengaged, I stepped in, not only doing my job, but his as well. And we were headquartered on the West Coast, so I was often in the office late into the evening, putting in 13 and 14-hour days consecutively. Now, what no one tells jugglers is this: capability can quietly become a trap. Because once people know you can handle it, they stop asking whether you should. A client once said to me, I don't even know what I'd ask for help with. I just know I'm tired. The juggler's question isn't, what should I do next? It's this: what would happen if I stopped doing something? And why do I believe I can't? Next up is the restless achiever. So the restless achiever is successful, at least on paper. They've built a solid career. They've demonstrated their value again and again and again. And yet, there's a quiet restlessness, a sense that the success they work so hard for doesn't quite fit anymore, and that they're ready for something more even if they can't yet name it. My first big leadership role was exciting. until it wasn't. Gradually, I realized we were stuck. The moves we needed to make weren't palatable to leadership, which meant we'd stay exactly where we were. And for me, that meant arrested development. But it also meant arrested development for the business and the team. A client once told me, I'm ready to take on a bigger challenge. I just don't know if that's available where I am. The restless achiever's question becomes, what is the growth I'm actually after now? And what's stopping me from going for it? Our next archetype is quietly burning out. So quiet burnout rarely looks dramatic. It sneaks up on you. This archetype is still showing up, still performing, still meeting expectations, but the energy is draining slowly, steadily. The joy is thinning, the curiosity is fading, and even showing up begins to feel heavy. I've lived this archetype. I once held a role in an organization so misaligned with who I am that I struggled to focus in meetings. I had little interest in building relationships with peers, and that disconnection didn't just affect me, it rippled through the team. Quiet burnout often goes unnoticed until it's undeniable. The invitation here isn't a bold reinvention, it's awareness. The question becomes, what is this season costing me? And why am I ignoring the signs? Next up is the dreamer. Now, the dreamer has a part of themselves on hold. It's a dream, maybe a creative instinct or a calling. And it was shelved for good reasons, maybe caregiving or the financial reality. Maybe they stayed in that role for health insurance. It's about survival or maybe timing. But the pull is growing stronger. I worked with a client who tucked her creative dream deep away, convinced she needed to stay on a path that felt familiar and safe. And she put that part of herself on a shelf so she could focus on what she believed she should be doing. The shelf was never the problem. Staying there forever is. As one client put it, I don't want to change everything. I just don't want to wake up someday and realize I didn't go for it. That's the shelved dreamer speaking. The question here is gentle but powerful. What have I set aside for someday? And what would it take for someday to be right now? Our next archetype is the rising leader. The rising leader is already in the role. They have the title, the scope, the responsibility. What they're navigating now isn't getting there, it's growing into it. This archetype often appears after a promotion, a role expansion, or a visible step up. And from the outside, it looks like success. But inside, there's pressure. Pressure to prove they deserve the seat. Pressure to speak with confidence while still finding their footing. Pressure to lead others while managing their own self-doubt. One client shared that she felt compelled to over-prepare for every meeting with her boss. Her business was tough, and she believed she needed every detail to prove her value. She replayed those conversations endlessly and lost sleep as a result. Here's the truth. Confidence doesn't automatically arrive with the title. In fact, the greater the responsibility, the louder the inner critic can become. The rising leader isn't learning how to lead. She's learning how to trust herself while she leads. The question becomes, how do I lead with authority and authenticity without overcompensating? This is where energy matters most, not intensity, but steadiness, presence, and self-trust. The final archetype is the seeker. And, for some people, something completely different happens. The role changes or ends or no longer fits. The seeker often appears in transition, sometimes by choice, sometimes suddenly, a job loss, a voluntary exit, or a values misalignment that can no longer be ignored. This archetype isn't just navigating uncertainty, they're navigating identity loss. One client said to me, "I don't know what's next, and I don't know who I am without that title." It was the first time she noticed how closely her title had become tied to her sense of worth. We don't talk enough about how destabilizing this can be, especially for high-performing leaders whose identities have long been anchored in contribution and responsibility. The seeker is standing on a threshold, and thresholds aren't empty spaces. They are the spaces that prepare us for something new. The seeker's work is awareness and willingness. Awareness of what has ended, and a willingness to sit in not knowing exactly how it's going to play out. The question here is, who am I becoming now, and what wants to emerge next? None of these archetypes are problems to solve. They're signals. Each one offers an invitation to awe. Awareness of where you are, willingness to honor what's true without the story we add to it, and the energy to choose how you want to move forward. The goal isn't to rush your way out of an archetype. It's to listen, because when you can name your season clearly, you stop personalizing it as failure and start navigating it with intention. And that is what unlocks meaningful action. If one or more of these archetypes resonated, that's not random. Recognition is often the beginning of clarity. That's why I created the Messy Middle Archetype Assessment. Not to tell you who you are, but to help you name where you are, so you can navigate what's next with more compassion and choice. So you're going to find this free assessment linked in the show notes, and I welcome the opportunity to explore your results with you. Thanks for listening to Thriving in the Messy Middle. Some weeks, you'll hear me in conversation with extraordinary women. Other weeks will be solo episodes where I'll share mindset shifts to help you thrive right where you are. And don't forget, you'll also find my Messy Middle moments in your feed. These are short solo reflections with a quick burst of clarity and encouragement to help you stay grounded. So be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if today spoke to you, share it with a friend or leave a review. This really helps others find the show. And check out the show notes for everything we mentioned today. And for more articles, resources, and ways we can work together, visit chooseaw.com. I'll leave you with this. You are the most worthwhile project you will ever work on. So until next time, keep thriving, even in the messy middle.